I am 56% Bitcoin. By the way, keep your, even though you're not using your real name, which is great, keep your security tight. Sol, 18.48%, MicroStrategy, 14.59%, and Tesla, 10.95%. I recently began selling covered calls on MicroStrategy and Tesla for cash flow, which have been life-changing, and wow, the amount of gain I could make if I had more contracts. If you were me, would you sell some Bitcoin and Sol into MicroStrategy and Tesla to sell more calls? My Bitcoin is very precious and it won't be easy to part from. This is interesting. And fun fact. So covered calls was what made me, starting that in the 90s. And it was just very simple, wash, rinse, repeat, methodical. And I've enhanced that strategy over the years, over the decades. But again, it's extremely powerful, especially if you have a process. Second of all, which is even more fascinating, back in the last bear market, I made the conscious decision for many factors to go into MicroStrategy using options because I'm an options trader. I feel very comfortable with them. And I didn't feel as comfortable with, and people groan as like, ooh, I didn't feel as comfortable with self-cold storage of Bitcoin. Felt it was too risky. If anything ever happened to me, fell off my bike, hurt my head, forgot something, house burned down, it's just way too risky for what I was talking about. So I was much happier with kind of dealing options in my traditional brokerage accounts, which actually was a gift. But the other reason, which what you've nailed on too, is it's very difficult to sell Bitcoin because you know it's going to be worth $1 million if it survives the next 5 or 6 years. How are you going to sell that at 100 grand? And you know it's going to 10x in 5 years. It becomes very sticky. But things like MicroStrategy, being an equity and being a trader, there's less emotional connection, especially if you have something in cold storage. You kind of let it sit and wait. And then it's very difficult to pull out and trade. It's much easier with stocks. So that's kind of where I come from. So hooray there. Second of all, covered calls, the more volatility, the more premium, the more lucrative it can get. Definitely think about adding more MicroStrategy. But let's MicroStrategy for covered calls. So it's very, very powerful. But let's look at the chart here. This is MicroStrategy Bitcoin. You can see here it's at the bottom of the range. It's actually flashing a buy on the confidence model here as well. Bottom right green. And so far, over the last, what is that? How many, 4 or 5 months, bottom of the range, buy signal, and MicroStrategy has been flat against Bitcoin. Yes, we had that crazy spike in November after, all the hoo-ha about the strategic Bitcoin reserve and all the other good stuff, and the crazy buying as well from Michael Saylor beginning on the 11th of November. Things kind of got a little bit overheated, and that's very clear from the chart here. But be careful as well, being at the bottom of the range, be careful selling calls against MicroStrategy here. We're now exactly at $300. Odds are it maybe goes up. Tesla, also very volatile. Moves a lot. But the other thing you got to be careful of with Tesla, as we saw as well after November 5th, it had moves fast when it wants to. Like it went from the 200s up to the $480 in a very short window of time. And remember, all major gains happen over approximately 10 or 15 days a year. And this is shout out to Cern Basher as well. That's where all the gains are happening. So most of the time it's chopping sideways. So imagine the middle of this chart here. That's when you sell all the covered calls, but not before a big spike. And you can see exactly when the big spikes are over using things like mean reversion, etc. So bear that in mind too. Now, Solana is another interesting one here. Should you sell some of that to buy MicroStrategy or Tesla? That's also at the bottom of the range. I should have called this video the bottom of the range. But over the last 2 years, yes, Solana has beaten Bitcoin by 160%. And from the bottom of the range, Bitcoin has done a 6x. So you can imagine how well Solana did by beating Bitcoin. But at the same time, this year in this pair, Solana has underperformed Bitcoin by 10%. So yes, it's lagging. And you can see maybe at the bottom range, maybe it'll fall further. Maybe Bitcoin will go to the moon. We shall see. But the point is, sometimes be careful selling things at bottoms. It's good to rotate them closer to tops, or even in the middle of the range, but not at the bottom. So we'll watch this carefully. Now, I'm going to talk a bit about one thing here, which triggered an idea as I was answering this question. is a thought experiment regarding one thing I've always been very aware of is scarcity, and how scarcity is very valuable. This is a AI image. Thank you, AI, for putting it together, of a Gucci purse that costs $350 to make, but can be sold for north of $5,000 to $6,000, or even up to $40,000, depending on the scarcity of what it is. But then the reason we're in Bitcoin is because it's scarce, and that's the whole story. But I was thinking, what would, Bitcoin and Sol, what would Solana be worth if I appraised it across 25 different ratios using my composite valuation model that I've been using for years for equities and stuff like that? And the answer is pretty alarming, everybody. This is, again, a thought experiment. This is all ridiculous, but it shows you how special Bitcoin is. So come at it from that perspective. Again, this composite scores used to value assets, and I'm just running numbers. If Solana is valued the same way as Bitcoin, based on the matrix below where you see just a snapshot of some of the numbers, the market cap of Solana would be $24 trillion. That'd be 12x what Bitcoin is today, at about $2 trillion. And of course, this is madness, but it's a thought experiment on ratios, and it's a thought experiment to illustrate scarcity. The reason we're in Bitcoin is because it's scarce, and that's the fascinating thing about it. So conclusion for you, yes, do it. It's very lucrative to sell covered calls, but beware of Tesla as it pops violently 10 or 15 days a year. Make sure you don't get called out. Make sure you do sell calls after a big spike up. Also, beware doing things at the bottom of a range. For example, selling calls against MicroStrategy here at $300. Not a good place to do it. Now, we'll talk more about MicroStrategy in a minute, about when it'll hit $400 as well. All these questions bleed together, and that question is coming up right now. This is, and I by the way, I always say as well, billions are made in the bear. For some reason, a lot of people must have just come into the market in November 2024, and they're what you call top buyers. And I understand the pain. You come into a new space, a new asset, and you buy the top, and then it goes down. When everybody is excited and happy, and all of a sudden you're not. I understand that. Okay, but that's why I also say as well, billions are made in the bear. Okay? We are 80% through the bull. Maybe 70%. Maybe there's a 10 or 15% chance we're 100% through the top. Maybe we've seen the top. I don't know. But either way, be careful. So I'm going to answer this question as well. And my condolences to those who were top buyers. It happens every time around. But next time, be early to the party. Load up in the bear. Do not load up when we're 80% through the bull.